Ambrosia Software's Escape Velocity was one of my favorite games during the 1990s, and it also bears the distinction of being the first game that I ever really extensively took apart and modified. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on the game because I never took the actual source code apart, but I did heavily modify and examine the resources. The best thing about it for me wasn't just that they had a winning game, but that it was very easy to mod. It had support for plugins, and the data files could be opened by the same editing app, EV-Edit, that you could build plugins on. The current version, or the most recent version of EV-Edit that I've used, is version 3.3. I'm still searching for a download link for any of you who might want to try it, but you can get version 2.3 off the Ambrosia Software website. Now, having said that, Escape Velocity and EV-Edit were designed for Mac OS Classic. Not only were they never ported to Windows, but they were also never ported to Mac OS X. Therefore, I planned to port my plugins and the plugins of many other people, most of them anonymous, to the new reboot of Escape Velocity Classic, thanks to data files which will work with EV Nova, or Escape Velocity Nova, released about 8 years later, which is still compatible with current Windows and Mac OS X machines. Now, I also need to look at how much the two programs are different from each other. In EV Nova, they vastly expanded the so-called universe. It has completely different ships, mostly different planets, and it has been argued a different storyline, although you can see it as a sequel of Escape Velocity. Another odd one out is Escape Velocity Override, which was a prequel released in the late 90s, which has a larger system of, well, star systems, in spite of the fact that it's supposed to take place earlier. Now, currently, you can edit EV Nova plugs or the EV Nova data files. It's a continuation of the same old situation with two editing programs. One of them is EV New, which is the one that I use. I would argue that the interface is not as good as EV-Edit. EV-Edit was very, very user-friendly, very Mac-oriented, and as a result, you could see the systems as you were editing, you could see the sprites, you could see all kinds of things. It's not that EV New is terrible, it's just that it's hard to go to that after you have used EV-Edit, which was a much better editor. It would be really nice to see Ben Chess produce a new EV-Edit for EV Nova, but I don't know what he's doing now. I've had trouble getting contacts for him, and like I said, I've had trouble even getting download links for EV-Edit 3.3. An alternative to EV New as an editor is Res Editor. Res Editor is great mostly because it will run completely in Java. It can only run completely in Java. So as a result, it is ideal both for Macs and for PCs. One drawback to it is that I can't get it to run on my computer. The first run worked, but I didn't have EV Nova installed, so I couldn't actually use it. Now it just won't load at all. And I would really like to see a bug fix for this. If somebody can tell me what I'm doing wrong. Because it worked initially, and in theory, if it's Java, it should be above the fray in a way. It really shouldn't have any problems. That's the whole point. I'd also really like to see if it has a better graphical user interface than EV New, because if it did, I would switch immediately. So in any case, over the years, I have developed a few plugs for EV Classic. I've never developed anything for Nova because I only got suitable editors this week, literally this week, with EV New. And I probably will do a few for it, but at the moment I'm too busy porting my old plugs, plus the plugs that I had collected for Escape Velocity Classic when I was still using it regularly. My own plugs include primarily the Confed Battleship, which is a double-sized cruiser, the Confed destroyer, which is a frigate that's been lightened up and sped up, basically. That's a really lazy one. And then I've done a few star systems as well, mostly for my own use, my own amusement, and a few missions to go with those. But for the most part, those ships are my legacy. Now, some of the reason I didn't go further with the ships was that originally the models were 3D, and I didn't know how to do 3D modeling in the days that I was modeling for Escape Velocity. I actually learned 3D modeling when I was modding for Redline, another Ambrosia game based around car racing. And now I feel I could actually do models. One of the unique things about Escape Velocity, which was intended to make it very widely compatible, including on very weak systems, was that it was not in reality 3D. The original images were of 3D models, screenshots of 3D models basically, converted into 2D sprites with lighting and everything else to make it look like it was 3D. So it wasn't a 3D game, but it looked like one, which was very clever. They didn't actually use a mainstream graphics program to do it either. They used Bryce 3D, which I would argue is fairly unusual for this application, since it was always designed mostly for 3D landscapes, not 3D models per se. The program that I've used for years is Blender, and of course the mainstream of games modders use 3D Studio Max, at least if they have the budget. And of course the professional game companies also use 3D Studio Max. But Ambrosia used Bryce. And Bryce is still around, actually. It still is very visually similar. But the thing is it's more about taste, more about like what you prefer. I will probably use Blender if I end up making models for any of the Escape Velocity games. But that's for another tutorial. In the meantime, enjoy my tutorials about porting, and I'll probably learn a great deal along the way that will help me to develop things more efficiently in the future. So, in any case, thanks for watching, and I will soon have more tutorials for you.